All right. Chris Miner, Ajay Nwosu, welcome to the Future of Fitness.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
for
me.
having us, Eric.
Yeah, I'm so glad we finally pulled this together. Chris, obviously, you and I have the pleasure of talking periodically. You're always great at reaching out and staying in touch. And AJ, I've heard your name so many times, and I'm so bummed I missed you when I was in LA. We try to make it happen and meet IRL, as the kids say. I was just joking about that. But it's really cool. I love what you guys are doing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're going to cover today. I mean, the Fuel Showcase, COACT Capital. You guys are very well connected within the industry. You have very good sense, the heartbeat of what the industry is doing from an investment level, from an operator level, all of those key insights. So much to unpack. I'm just going to stop talking. Let's have you guys do some quick introductions. Chris, let's start with you, and then we'll go on to you, AJ, after that.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Eric. My background is very, I would say, unconventional. So I was an owner operator. I owned sports performance centers across the United States, mainly in Illinois. So got a master's degree in biomechanics, kinesiology, undergrad exercise physiology, and started training athletes right out of graduate school. So early 2000s. By 2004, started my first business, which was called Acceleration Sports Performance. Ended up training hundreds of professional athletes, thousands of collegiate athletes, and that kind of led me into advising, consulting, and eventually starting COACT Capital, which is an angel fund that invests across mainly fitness, wellness, and sports technology companies. So I came full circle. A lot of people in venture capital, they started in venture capital. My background is just being on the ground floor, ground level, and really understanding some of these basic concepts and principles.
Awesome. How about you, AJ?
Slightly unconventional background. I would describe myself as sort of a byproduct of globalization. In a more unconventional way, I was born in Africa. I was raised in the Middle East, went to school in England, and I've lived in the US in my adult life. And that's afforded me the great luxury of obviously understanding different cultures and different nuances. And so my background stems from first degree aerospace engineering, second degree business and marketing and economics. And I've always been interested not only in entrepreneurship, but how things work. How do you sort of deconstruct things and put it back together? And I think tangentially, you can tie that into today's world and entrepreneurship in general and businesses in general as well. So, and then during my period in Chicago in the US was where Chris and I came across and became close acquaintances and finally business partners and friends. And from there, we've only gone from strength to strength. And my day to day right now, I am the CEO of a company called TEQBALL, which is an up and coming sport that we have hyperbolized and are taking towards the Olympic level. As of today, we're in 153 countries around the world with a presence. The goal is to be part of Los Angeles 28 Olympic Games. We've just completed the European Olympic Games 3 weeks ago in Krakow. So a lot of excitement there. We have a global office with 198 employees around the world. So.
Awesome. And TEQBALL, that's TEQBALL, right? For people who want to.
That's correct.
Yeah. I was did a little bit of research on it. It's a really challenging game. I mean, I don't know if I'm that coordinated.
Well, we'll have to get you on the table, Eric. I always say it's a narrative versus a reality. The narrative is, yes, looks challenging. It is once you the first couple of goes and tries, but with a bit of training and skill, I believe in you, Eric.
Thanks, AJ. Thanks, buddy. Right on. Well, let's get into I guess your guys' origin story as a duo, right? Like, how did you guys meet? What came up? What was the impetus for COACT Capital? And then we'll take the storytelling from there.
So should we tell the Hollywood version, AJ, or should we? So Eric, I guess I'll lead off on this one.
Okay.
So during my career at Acceleration, we were training college athletes, pro athletes, and this was early on in the business. So we got a spot on CBS Sports. So essentially, we were doing a combine down in Florida, and instead of paying us to run a couple hundred of the top high school athletes through a combine, they offered us a 30-second video spot. It had to be commercial grade for CBS. So we were a young startup. So we didn't really have a budget. So I just started inviting, some of our athletes to participate in the commercial. And in walks this specimen, which is AJ. He's playing soccer in a league in the facility, the big sportsplex that we were in. And so I was like, hey, my name's Chris. How would you like to be in a sports commercial? So AJ, just moving up here, was getting into, he was coaching soccer. So he was like, yeah, well, why not? Tell me more about it. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be on CBS Sports. You're going to debut. This could launch like a whole career for you, sports modeling or just in commercials. So he's like, why not? So he ended up taking the whole day off of work the following week, telling all his family back in the UK, telling all his friends, he's going to premiere in this like big commercial.
Eric, I kid you not, Chris sold this dream to me. And as he describes it is exactly word for word what occurred. And I think for anyone that knows Chris out there, obviously he could sell sand to the Arabs. So from that perspective, but I'll let you complete the story, Chris.
Yeah, so like I said, we really didn't have a budget. So we gather all these guys around and we get this, we interviewed a bunch of different videographers and we couldn't afford many of them. So we picked the one that was working at the local college. So they're like, okay, we're not going to do any prep work. We're going to go in there and we're going to shoot it, limited editing. So I literally invited 40 other athletes just in case. I didn't think everybody was going to show up. So everybody shows up and we start doing these video takes, and ultimately they kind of were like, we're going to edit it once. We're not going to like give you a lot of like chance to give feedback. And so AJ, I could text him. I'm like, okay, it's going to premiere, next Tuesday. So he tells everybody about it. And so when they edit it, everybody's like ready to watch this. He basically had a watch party at at a local pub. So it comes out and it's 30 seconds long, and all you see is his ankle, essentially, moving fast, and he's next to I think like an 8-year-old girl's feet, and it's moving, and all you could see, you can't see his face, his body, anything. So when they edited it, so he's like, all these people are watching back home, all his friends, and like literally it's maybe a tenth of a second, and it's just like his feet.
Eric, it was less than that, and I watched it 5 times, still trying to find myself. And I was nowhere to be seen, but nonetheless, yeah, that was a start of an amazing relationship between Chris and I. So
we ended up just becoming great friends, and throughout the years, with AJ advancing in his career, going from coach to CEO, just and onward, we were seeing a lot of the same deals in the sports and fitness and wellness space. So we're like, hey, we're seeing a lot of deal flow. We're investing in different things separately. Why don't we combine forces? That's hence the name COACT, to act together. So we created the angel fund to start investing, and our kind of motto is 1 + 1 = 3. AJ kind of coined that phrase, and it's more than capital. A lot of times we're not the biggest check, sometimes the smallest check, but we are the most strategic check, because we bring in our expertise, our experience, we bring in our network, and we also bring in, strategies, right? So, if you want to bring in talent, athletes, celebrities, we have that access as well. So we don't just cut the check. We dig in deep with the founders and provide, go-to-market strategies, marketing capabilities, and all the other resources. So we've been at it for about a little bit over 5 years, 20 plus investments, and some of the ones that we're really high on, companies as big as Hyperice, the recovery modality company, Speed Fit. We got allocation in Pathwater. We also got allocation in the collective performance clubs down in Austin, soon Nashville. And other companies like mental health software companies like Helium. And one that we're probably one of the most highest on is Ariel. And I'll kind of let AJ take it from here to kind of touch more in depth on some of these companies.
That'd be great.
Sure, absolutely. As Chris referenced, when you look at deal flow in today's market, there's a plethora of different opportunities, and I always say it's almost it's hard to kind of do some due diligence sometimes. But Chris and I are founder first, right? We always look at the founder, and then secondary, obviously, the product sometimes isn't always the catalyst for the biggest success, but the human being behind that. And so for us, that's something we always bet on, and we've always used as part of our DD and our thesis in terms of getting to know that human being at their core and what drives them. And then secondly, just how innovative is a product? What's a use case and application in today's society? I always say there's three rules of innovation, which is first, best, and only. The last one is slightly skewed, but at the same time, the first two apply. And so for Chris and I, obviously, within the context of the investments we've done over the last 5 years, we apply all of these sort of factors and deploy a more scholastic approach in terms of what we do. And we're really bullish on a lot of companies, both in the CPG space, sports tech, as Chris referenced, and a lot of them are more well known than others, but at the same time, a lot of them are sort of disrupting their industries. They're what I would call SMBs that are sort of covert underneath and sort of disrupting the marketplace and gaining more prominence and more market share. It's also our ability to delay gratification. I think that's an important factor in terms of what we do in our due diligence. It's not about making a return in the next sort of delta of the next 2 to 3 years. It's more so, okay, let's look at 10-year cycles. And what is that company going to do over the course of time? And how is a founder thinking about disrupting that marketplace? And so we've been, I would say, incredibly successful so far in terms of applying that cadence in terms of all the investments we've done.
Well, two questions for you guys as a follow-up to all that. I guess the first one is, we mentioned 5 years roughly, right? Is what you guys, probably 5 of the most interesting years you could have been in the investment world and, sports performance and, all the industries you've had. So, can maybe walk me through, like, how has your confidence and level gone up and down? Like, if you had to put a measurement on it over the last 5 years, because we saw so much freaky stuff happen, right? Like, you just happen to pick the most interesting 5 years, like I stated. So give me some ideas, like, how has that journey been due to the volatility of the last 5 years?
It's definitely been a roller coaster, right? It started off really, the markets were hot, right? You had Peloton, you had Tonal, you had all these huge evaluations and huge upside. And then over the last, I would say, 2.5, 3 years, the market really dried up. So even from the venture capital side down to the angel investor, but then there's been more innovation and more startups pop up at the same time. So we're at this like inflection point where it's like we're getting more opportunity, but we also learned from our mistakes and other companies we invested in. Our first 5 investments, who knows if we'll ever see a return, to be quite frank, but we learned from that and we built our network. So we always got something out of each startup that we invested in. It might not be a direct ROI in capital, but human capital, resources, exposure, and really a painful learning experience took place. So then we got smarter, and we started kind of solving a problem that, quite frankly, I think needs to be solved. And that's, we can invest behind a founder, but essentially if the founder doesn't have capital to deploy or to launch, we can't really help that founder. So we built out an investment arm that allows, syndication through an SPV, to add more fuel or firepower to that company. And then we also knew that we had to go in and apply not only our knowledge base, but our resources to these founders. So we really got smarter. And then I guess lastly, it was staying in an area that we not only have experience in, but we could reach out to the best of the best in that sector. So getting back to sports, getting back to fitness, getting back to wellness technology companies, that's really our sweet spot. We dabble into augmented reality, we dabble into CPG, but really staying in the lane that we've operated in over 20 years. So,
AJ, you mentioned earlier you guys have been wildly successful with your so far, right? How do you measure that? Like, do you have a time horizon as far as when you want ROI on your investments? But how are you guys measuring success with your work at COACT?
Yeah, it's a great question, Eric. I think for us, obviously, when we look back at the investments we've done, obviously we had this small little issue called COVID the last 2-3 years. On the delta of that, moving forward, any sort of organization that I would say withstood that era is a badge of honor. And then moving into the future, we sort of look at, on the back end of COVID, what is the rate of growth, right, for each investment that we have done over that course of cycle. How have they come out on the back of COVID? And we look at that, amortize that out over the last 24 months. A lot of the companies have grown by over 45, 50%, some even more, depending
Nice.
on the industry. So that's sort of how we measure that in terms of that cycle. And then, as we move forward, I don't think it's people always look at investing as I would say, a complex quadratic equation, but it's not. It's simply just applying core simple principles. In day to day, the same way you would run your company or your life and that disciplinary aspect is what you apply to sort of investing as well, and doing your due diligence with founders, etc., and all the above. But that's how we measure it.
Awesome. SPVs. That's something that I think, I don't know, it's been new in my nomenclature personally over the past few years. I don't know, I'm sure it's been around forever, but maybe you could shed some light, educate our audience exactly like what are they, why are they useful, why do they exist, how do you guys deploy them?
So for everybody out there that doesn't know, I mean, they're called SPVs, special purpose vehicles. They basically offer a syndication option. I do think there is a need for venture capital, and there's always going to be angel investments. But through this syndication, it allows two things to happen: the lower barrier of entry. So, say me and AJ start a SPV through COACT or through Fuel Venture Studio. We could do all the legal, all the structuring, and then investors that might only want to invest $5,000 to $10,000 to $15,000, instead of trying to meet a minimum of $50,000 to $100,000, they could come in through our vehicle that's already open. And then alongside of that, a company only gets one entity added to the cap table, right? So it's not going to crush them if we bring in 50 guys, investors at $10,000 a piece, right? They get $500,000, but only one line item on the cap table. But they also then get 50 strategics that they don't have to manage, because we would manage the other side of that investment. So it just gives people more opportunity in this day and age. We with the Fuel Showcase coming up, it's not just about the investment part, but it's also about getting access. And the people that are coming on, watching these different companies and getting opportunities, now they could get in at a lower amount. They might say, hey, I could spread out $10,000 across 5 companies instead of doing $50,000 in one company. So I think it's a win-win on both sides.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I mean, it's kind of like, and forgive me for my naivety here, but kind of like a GoFundMe, right? But done more strategically in some ways. I mean, is that an accurate statement? Maybe you can explain that to me like I'm in 6th grade.
I think that's very accurate. Slightly, you hit it right. You hit it right on the head. It allows that strategic investor, and then also, we're managing the people that we bring in. Like, we did a pretty big million SPV for a pretty prominent company, that it was doing a Series A. And we were able to bring in not only some professional athletes, but also some industry leaders. So we grouped our money together, but we then would manage our investors that we brought in. So instead of adding another, 15 guys to the cap table, this company already has 400 investors. So now we're responsible of, managing these guys, but any kind of resources or doors that they could open from a strategic level, we then could apply that to the company. So we're building, twice the value.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, it's something that I've heard it thrown around. I mean, you guys know probably Jim and Jason at the Sage House. I know, they do fairly similar work, but different. It's always just seems like a really exciting space that you guys are in. I mean, you're kind of, especially for someone like me who's, I need, 10 things going on in my life at once. It's like you can really spread around, but still offer, a very succinct value to each one who's in your ecosystem. It's interesting. And we mentioned a couple times now in the podcast, but the fuel showcase that you guys have coming up at the end of the month. Maybe start with this. When you guys decided to start this, what was the problem that you saw that you're like, okay, we need to figure out something to solve this problem, and then we'll go with what you're actually doing to solve the problem. So yeah, let's go from there.
No, I think that's a great way to look at it. So what we've been seeing over the last 5-6 years is founders. It's tough being a founder. Quality of life is actually terrible. So think of it this way. Founders have this great idea, a great product, or great service. And that's why they create this company to launch that and to build that business side. But they find themselves spending most of their day doing things that A, they're not equipped to be doing, and 2, things that they don't want to be doing. So picture founder A. Founder A spends 6 hours of the day talking to one investor every hour, trying to raise capital. And then he spends the rest of the day trying to pick the right marketing company, the right distribution channel, the right manufacturer, hiring the right staff, bringing on the right advisors, away from the actual project or the service or the service that they've started, the company trying to put all their effort into. So essentially they're doing something they don't want to be doing. So with Fuel, the Fuel Venture Studio model, what it essentially solves is it saves the founder time, money, and effort. And what I mean by that, there's a matchmaking component where it gives them access to vetted resources, whether they're creative agencies, consultants, advisors, access to talent, access to investors that are vetted. So it saves them time. They don't have to go out there and try to find this guy to meet this guy and maybe to take a chance on a marketing agency or a person and spend all that money and time when they could start with a vetted community to choose from.
We essentially give them the ability to access knowledge and human capital that creates enough inertia for their business to run efficiently. For us, the startup world, I always say, is very Darwinian, right? It's survival of the fittest. And so being nimble and having obviously access to people and knowledge is highly important, which is why you see today that I always say capital is easily accessible, but strategic capital is harder to come by. And so that's what we offer here in a nutshell.
Awesome. And maybe you guys can walk me through it as an example. You can either, use a company that's gone through, that's really leveraged what you guys have to offer. I think it's always great to walk through something specific.
Yeah, one of the first companies that we applied the Fuel Venture Studio was SpeedFit. For those that don't know SpeedFit, it's essentially one of the first AI strength training machines that not only have a diagnostic application, but also have a data analysis infrastructure built in to produce better programming, better results. So the way that that deal went down is we applied $100,000 of real capital for equity, but then we were able to source some of the video content, video editing, some of the talent that got brought on to supply speed with the necessary resources to get off the ground quick and cost effective. So that was one. And then there's a couple more that we kind of played around with the model, but essentially we want to do these probably 3 or 4 of them every quarter. And there's the investment arm, and then there's the connectivity arm.
Interesting. And is it just you guys who are running Fuel Venture Studio, or is this like a conglomerate? Like who's behind it all?
It's a whole community.
Cool.
We're at the top of it, but essentially the way I break it down, and it's going to kind of sound, I guess the parable's very simple. We take a pond and we stock it with the best experts in the sector, whether they're lawyers, consultants, advisors, just leading experts. We stock that pond, and we also throw in investors. And then we allow the founders to come fish from that pond. So we started in Chicago. Well, it's invite only, and we invited 100 of the top founders. So they pay a monthly subscription fee, and they get to fish from the pond. But this isn't just a pond of resources. This is vetted resources. So there's vetting on both sides. We not only vet the founder, but we also vet the people, the consultants, the advisors, and the people that are the best in their industry. So it's a two-sided vetted community. And then through AI, we will essentially matchmake the two and make the introduction for them. So they're not going out doing all the vetting and spending all this time and money. So keeping it very exclusive. The next chapter that will open up will be Fuel Austin, and then Fuel LA. And then we'll go out to all the major cities and just bring this amazing resource to all the founders.
How do you guys do the vetting process? I mean, on both ends. I mean, that's yeah. I would imagine it's fairly subjective, right? But some objectivity would fit into it too. I mean, that's probably part of your secret sauce. But if you guys can explain, like, how do you vet?
So the vetting on the founder side is roughly a 7 to 10 minute, Airtable where we're asking to see everything from the pitch deck to the go-to-market strategy to who's on your team, what are you raising. That's the first step. But then we also have a verification process to get kind of the check mark, and that's another hour-long workshop where we go through and not just look to see what they're trying to accomplish, but who they are as a person. Take it from a deeper level. What drives them? What are their values? What are their passions? To get to know them on a way deeper level. And then on the talent side, well, with investors, right? It's hard to really vet an investor. Like what makes a good investor versus a bad investor? I have personally about 30 investments. Does that make me a good investor, a bad investor? So that's really, are you accredited or not accredited, right? But with the talent, AJ and I come across some of the best, guys like yourself, Eric, that come from, the fitness sector, or guys that are the best in class from the marketing sector or distribution or manufacturing. So we get to meet these guys on a daily basis and find out, get to know them, get to know what they do. And then they go through a vetting process as well. They have to give their whole resume and background. And also we want to know what drives them, because ultimately this is a culture that we're building. We don't want just successful people, but we want people that are successful and ultimately the values and purpose align as well. Because it leads, it's more sustainable, we could scale faster, and ultimately the connection would be made long-term instead of short-term.
I think just to add to that as well, one of the core principles that we sort of look at, each company and each founder, their story and their history is autobiographical to a large degree. But we sort of look at what problems are they solving within their respective industries or marketplace. And I always say there's sort of 3 core principles we use, which is Are they in a red ocean, a blue ocean, or a pink ocean? A red ocean being, is it a saturated market they're entering? And what does that look like holistically? A blue ocean being, are they early in the market, solve the problem before the end users realize they had a problem? And a pink ocean being the end consumers realize they have a problem, are actively trying to solve it themselves before they've experienced that product. So that's sort of one of the first principles we sort of apply to any sort of startup.
Pink Ocean. Is that did you guys make that up? Is that your
No, that's a Peter Thiel model.
IP? Is it? Okay, I've heard blue and red. I just never heard pink. Okay, good. Well, as always, I learned multiple things. Yeah, I always learn multiple things on these podcasts. So I'm curious about the venture studio. Is it like a brick and mortar? Is it physically where people gather, or is it something more like a community that gathers, at random spots? Like how is that? Because I know you mentioned it's in Chicago. You're moving to Austin. You have a couple other locations you want to do.
So that's a great question, because it's going to start off, all digital, but eventually every major city will have a brick and mortar too. That's the exciting part. Is a place. So born and raised in Chicago, I operate mainly out of Chicago. You either have these places like a Soho House, which you end up doing more social than you do business, because you can't be on your phone, you can't be on your computer. You end up poolside talking business, or there's the flip side where you're on the 50th floor in Michigan Avenue. It's stuffy, it's private equity, it's venture capital in a sterile environment, right? There's really no place, AJ travels weekly to a different state or maybe even country at this point. There's no place that you can meet with founders, you can meet with other like-minded people, you could pitch your company and do both, right? Why can't we sip on some tequila or have a cappuccino, right, and talk business? Or why can't we, pitch our product or company in front of 15 very focused investors? So picture a place where roughly 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, high vaulted ceilings. In the corner, you got a podcast studio, you got a content room, you got a conference room, and then in the open area, you have a coffee bar, espresso bar, you have a tequila bar, you have some bean bags, just places where like-minded people could come together and have a think tank, have a business meeting, and just really, really do both. Because that's really, you're building more authentic and more organic relationships instead of just business or social. So eventually, Eric, to answer your question, there will be a brick and mortar play where you could host events, pitch competitions, showcasing, meetups, meetings, all of the above. So I'm very excited about that. That will launch at the beginning of next year. And there'll also be an AI-driven app. Just like a dating site, it'll say the founder's looking for this or the consultant is looking for this, and it'll matchmake the people that want to meet up and meet and do business together.
Very cool, you guys. Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's already something that I can tell I would love to hang out there. I mean, travel and do WeWorks and things like that, but it's not.
Why?
It's not quite what you want, right?
Because we could have did this podcast if we already had fuel. Like wherever you fly, Eric, you could have just been hosting your podcast, kind of in real life, with these different great founders or people that you're doing business with. So giving accessibility too. If a company wants to do a photo shoot, there's not really many places they could go to have that experience. So
yeah, very cool. Well, then tell me now, you guys are getting into, is it your second, the showcase? Is it your second one that you're going to be doing, or is this your first?
It's technically the second. The first one was under a different brand and name.
Okay.
And we kind of did it to test the market. We did no marketing. We just wanted to kind of see if it was something that we really needed to get more involved in. I kind of came in like halfway through, but essentially we ended up having 30 founders apply. We chose 8. We ended up having 250 people attend. So afterwards, I told Jeff, who is the co-founder of the Fuel Venture Showcase, I told him, hey, this, doing no marketing, this is huge. Like, imagine if we put some resources and marketing and firepower behind this thing. So we just closed out the official round of applications last Friday, and we had 85 health and sports technology companies apply. We put just a little bit of marketing behind it, and we're going to announce our selections, the six best health and sports technology companies. We're going to announce that tomorrow. And we're anticipating about 1,000 eyeballs. And these people that are going to attend, it's a digital showcase, so it's online. You don't have to travel for it. You don't have to prep and do all the logistics behind it. You just got to show up. So it's the 6 best in class, and we have some amazing, I can't wait to announce who's been selected, but these are some pretty big companies, some up and coming companies. We're going to announce that, and we do have 12 amazing panelists. We have managing partners of some pretty prominent VCs, Minggu Lee, former chief business officer of Samsung, and he's now managing $1.4 billion of AUM for Cleveland Avenue. We have Lance Dietz. Most of the audience listening right now will know who Lance Dietz is from KB Partners. And then we have, celebrity hosts like David Meltzer. We have ex-pro strength coaches like KK Lyles. And we have just this great group of panelists. So essentially, the 6 best will be at a pitch for 5 minutes. I'm assigning 2 panelists per startup to do the Q&A. So you get 5 minutes to pitch, 5 minutes of Q&A. And leading up to it, we found that we didn't do this last time. So we found out that they needed some pitch prep. So we're doing 2 hours of pitch prep leading into the pitch. Then afterwards, we're doing 2 hours of consulting, which is kind of follow-up and introduction. So essentially, these guys are getting access to the leading and potential, consultants, investors, and potentially consumers. So we're just glad that we're getting these founders in front of thousands, not just one person at a time throughout their day. So,
and is it how does the event actually take place? Is it all virtual? Are you guys going to be doing it in person? Give me some insights on what the experience is.
So this one is going to be digital. It'll lead into that in person, but right now it's just digital because we wanted to make it pretty, the barrier of entry very easy. But eventually it will be in person.
It's more scalable while being digital. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yep, and to get guests there too, right? We want 1,000 plus, so it's easier for somebody to log onto their computer during their lunch and sit down and listen for an hour and see 6 amazing startups and get access to these startups. And really what I'm finding out too is a lot of these, even investors, they want exclusive, private, vetted deal flow because there's a lot of noise out there. So they know that through our team and our community that we are seeing hundreds of deals and we're filtering it and we're just bringing them the 6 best. So they know when they turn on, these are going to be 6 that that we did our D&D.
And is it, I guess the audience, if you're not involved as a startup, right? Those 6 that you select, who's in the audience, you think? Is it obviously potential investors, right? Maybe some consultants, maybe people are just curious to learn about the industry. But yeah, who are you seeing? I mean, I know it's super early, but who do you guys see as the people actually participating in the event?
So the way we designed it and the way we look at it is it could be just channel partners. It could be, just people that want to collaborate, and it could be founders helping out other founders. It could be potential consumers. And a lot of times, like in VC, right, it might be too early. So it's good to get on the venture capitalist radar early, and they could follow the journey, the traction, and momentum. And it could just be meeting guys like you, Eric, that says, hey, I want to be a part of this company. It could be advising, it could be consulting. It could be a number of different things. It doesn't just have to be investment. Of course, a lot of people want the investment piece. To kind of add more context on that as well, is there's 6 per showcase. The winner of each showcase will pitch in what I call the Super Bowl at the end of the year. So the 6 best will all pitch against each other. And COACT Capital and Fuel Venture Studios writing the first $100,000 check into that winner. And what is the criteria? Well, we have 12 of the best panelists. We have our Fuel team. And it's really just if I give you 100,000, Eric, I give AJ $100,000 allocation. What company would you invest that 100,000 into? So it's a very simple formula, but it's very easy. And then that company will enter the next showcase without any cost and with a chance to compete for the initial 100,000, but that will be under an SPV. So anybody that's watched any of these showcases can add on to that SPV. So it's $5, 10, 15, $20,000 allocation. So we could eventually raise, as high as up to $1 million to the winner. But we're going to also supply them with consultants, advisors, talent, all the resources that they're going to need outside of money.
It sounds like a lot of fun, you guys. What do you guys need right now? I mean, I know it's the event's coming up shortly. Just to give people insights, we're recording right at the beginning of August. The event's at the end of August 2023. What do you guys need? How can the audience help you guys?
We would just love the whole community. I mean, Eric, just the people that have been on your podcast. I mean, it's the best of the best. Other founders, other experts, just people. We want to get more than our goal is 1,000+ eyeballs, because the more resources and the more access these founders have, the more sustainability and chance they have to succeed. So I would just love for the Future of Fitness podcast crowd and the groupies to show up, and it's free. So we're not charging anybody for this. It's just jump on for an hour and listen to the 6 best and meet some of the panelists and just give some feedback and tell us how they want to be a part of it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I concur with obviously what Chris has just referenced. For us, really, it's just hyperbolizing the showcase and the message to the wider audience. And I think if you can tell someone else about it and at least even tune in, and you may learn a thing or two. I think, obviously, from a knowledge perspective, there's a lot to be gained, even just from listening in to the panelists, the questions we ask, how we go about sort of making decisions, the different startups, the ideations they've come up with, because it's their baby. They've put a lot of time and effort into this, all these founders and startups. So we greatly respect that and appreciate that as well. And obviously, to your audience, my message would be just if you can tell one person about it and also tune in. So
Awesome.
Yeah, and
I think
it's August 30th. The start time is 12:30 Central Time. It should be roughly about an hour and a half. Free of charge. All you got to do is log on, and we'll send out the link, Eric. It's pretty seamless, pretty efficient. So we hope to see everybody there.
yeah,
awesome. And I was just going to say that there's a lot to be learned. I think if you're a student of entrepreneurship and business to do something like this, I was joking with you guys prior to recording. I'm like, you guys do what I want to do when I grow up someday, even though I'm 46. And it's just, some of those things I know when I tune in, I'm going to learn something, pick up a few things, and those are probably going to be super applicable to everything else that I do. One more question for you guys, because, you're in it. Kind of a fun question, but what, if you're going to look at, I'll keep it within the world of fitness, health, and wellness, right? What has you most excited? Any kind of emerging technologies, any kind of movements or anything that's going on right now? What's really got you going at this point? I'll let you guys both answer individually.
Sure, absolutely. I can take this one. Back to your original reference, I always say money monetizes once if you invest well, but knowledge monetizes forever. I think for us, it's more so understanding and gaining knowledge in the AI space is something that we're really excited about. The use case and application for AI, not only in sports betting, but also just the whole cadence of real estate as well, design. There's a lot of different opportunities out there, and a lot of arbitrage right now. It's still the wild, wild west, and there's obviously a lot of, I would say, compliance and governmental applications to come into place for AI. But at the same time, this space has us excited. Typically in the past, your billion-dollar companies or your unicorns were 1,000 employees. Then you looked at Instagram, which was one of the first billion-dollar companies with 15, 20 employees. And I always say with AI, it's really going to create the first unicorn that has 3, 4 employees, right? And AI can be a co-pilot for many organizations out there. And if you are a company out there today, really, you should be looking at a chief of AI, someone who's an innovator that can come in, tell you all the latest trends and apply it into different departments to create efficiency at scale for your organization. So that marketplace and that ecosystem has me very, very excited. And it's one that I've sort of back to the knowledge pathway that I think between Chris and I, we've sort of studied the space and gained an aptitude, a substantial amount of knowledge to be able to sort of deploy capital and understand what is real and what sort of charlatan in that space, and sort of invest wisely.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you, AJ. Absolutely. And Chris, what about you? Are you same thing, or is anything else that's catching your eye right now?
So there's a bunch of them, but one that really hits home for me and I'm passionate about is the recovery and regeneration space. So companies like Helium that are in the mental health sector, which are supplying software that could downshift the nervous system in less than 4 minutes, I think is extremely important and needed because in today's society, if you didn't have anxiety or you weren't stressed out since COVID, you probably are stressed out and you probably do have anxiety. So just the mental health space in general, but then also this new concept, which before I sold my businesses in the sports performance field, I was moving into the recovery space. So, like the Collective Social Performance Club down in Austin, what they're doing is phenomenal. They have recovery modalities, they have fitness, they have workspace, they have event space, and they're also moving into physical therapy as well as medical concierge. So it's pretty cool to see where it's evolving into. Like back then, I was just doing performance. So now having these places popping up, it's just really exciting to see somebody kind of put it, connect all the dots and, move forward through different spaces, but also, just helping people, touch on the physical, mental, and spiritual sectors.
Awesome. Awesome. Great insights, you guys. I love what you're doing there. I mean, if people want to reach out to you guys individually or together, is there any particular place you want them to go online?
LinkedIn seems to be the best place, and Chris is the biggest LinkedIn influencer. So I typically reach out to Chris, and then you can always find me as well because he'll tag me somewhere. But absolutely, no, LinkedIn is the place I would say to get a hold of us. So.
Awesome.
LinkedIn for now. In the future, it will be on the Fuel Venture Studio website and app. But right now, yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best. Just excited for people, whoever wants to learn more, get involved. I mean, we're building Fuel, so we would love to have anybody that wants to, interested in investing or consulting or advising. We just encourage them to reach out to us. But LinkedIn is probably the best.
Right on. Well, guys, thank you for joining me. I know you have a lot going on before the event, and we'll definitely get all the appropriate links and put them into the notes on this. I'll put it into my newsletter. I'll throw it up on LinkedIn as well. So I'm happy to support as much as I can. And appreciate you guys. A great break in my Wednesday morning to get to talk to you guys and learn a little bit. And ladies and gentlemen, Ajay Nwosu and Chris Miner.
Thanks again, Eric. Big fan of the podcast. This is great to finally be on.
Yeah, Eric, thanks for having us. Super grateful to be here, and pleasure is ours. Thank you.
Right on, guys. Be well. Talk soon.